Okay, I'm going to explain what I'm doing right here. So this is the intake port right here, and you can see there's this little ridge right here. And my screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, catches the ridge. And same thing with the exhaust port. The exhaust port has a ridge going out. So I'm not going to enlarge the port. I'm just going to knock down this ridge on the intake port and on the exhaust port. And I'm more going to be focusing on the exhaust port. And you can see there's still carbon built up in here. I'm going to use that as a guide so I can tell what I've removed and what still remains from the original port. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I did the same thing to all the ports, and now there's not a ridge. Alright, I got the pistons pulled out and I got the rings off. I have an R marked on here so I know that's the right cylinder. And right now I'm just soaking it in seafoam. I'm going to let that sit overnight, and that'll make getting the carbon off a lot easier. Tomorrow I'll go ahead and get the rest of the carbon off of these pistons. I'll put the new rings on, I'll set the ring gap, and then we'll go ahead and put the motor back together. Quick tip for everybody putting the valve keepers back in. A little bit of white lithium grease dab it on there. And that'll keep it from moving around when you're going to take the valve spring compressor off. I'm going to go ahead and fish it in here. And you can see it just, it's hard to pick up on the camera, but you can see the retainer is just kind of chilling in there. 1, 2. Okay, almost there. So I'm going to loosen the valve spring compressor. Sorry about the car in the background. And we'll see if it gets hung up or not. No siree. And it's that easy. Okay, and that's about it. The cylinder head has been cleaned. I got all the stuff out of the ports. You can see the chambers are nice and clean now. And I got the valves back in. I got the springs in. Now it's going to be time to put the engine back together. Alright, first start after the new rings. Okay my friends, here's the deal. I got the engine back together and I went ahead and rode it around. It's too early to say whether or not it's going to run really good at wide open throttle, but what I did notice is as soon as I got the engine back together and I tried to start it, as soon as I went to give it a little gas and rev it, it would die. And it was shooting a bunch of smoke out the tailpipe. So I had a hunch that the fueling was probably way too rich, and the wideband kind of jumps in and out, so it's when it's at idle, so it's kind of hard to get an accurate reading on it. So I went from, no joke, the richest position on the needle to the leanest, and now I can actually ride it up the road. So that's how much of a difference a fresh set of rings and a hone can do as far as how much vacuum the engine is creating. Because if you guys remember, when I initially jetted this thing, in order to get it to even run up the road, I had to go to the richest needle setting and I had to drill out the jets. Those of you who pay close attention will notice that when I was assembling the engine, I didn't use the gasket here and I used this red stuff. I'm going to go ahead and show you what that is right now. So this is Loctite 510, and the reason why I like this stuff is because I like to bump the compression up on my engines, but I would prefer not to have to go to the effort of decking the head and doing all that. So what I do is I delete the base gasket and I just use Loctite 510. Now this is a flange sealant meant specifically for metal to metal contact, and the nice thing about this stuff is you don't have to worry about how long it takes you to assemble the engine, so long as the cylinder and the case aren't touching. It will only begin to seal up when it's not exposed to air and it's exposed to two flanges that are touching together. You can see the stuff on the outside, it didn't dry, because if it's not pressed between two flange surfaces and it's exposed to air, it won't dry. That's what I like about this stuff. I'm sure you gearheads are wondering, why are you raising the compression when you put a turbocharger on? So there's two main reasons that I increase the compression. Number one is I have a hunch that if I don't have the compression high enough, I'm not going to be able to get the turbo to spool, which is what I experienced before I took the engine down. And number two, I want to run E85, so if I run E85, that's 105 octane, and E85 is also very cool. Running E85 will allow me to run the higher compression. That being said, everybody, I have no idea if this is actually going to work. I don't know how this bike is going to run when I actually go to wide open throttle, but as I said in another video, I'm pretty much done riding this thing up and down the street in my neighborhood. I'm sure my neighbors hate me by now. Keeping my fingers crossed that I can get this turbo to work, because if I can't, I'm probably going to go down to a smaller turbo. This is a GT15, I might have to go to a GT12. So that's it for this one, everybody. Next time you see this bike, I'm going to be riding it. I'm also going to have some GoPro footage so you can go for a ride with me.